Okay, good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us on this somber night after the shooting. We will have a moment of silence momentarily here, but I just wanted to start by just showing you the lineup of the wonderful candidates that we're going to have tonight. Tonight is May 24th, 2022. I'm going to pass it on to Nadia to lead the moment of silence, and then we'll continue with our agenda immediately after.
Of course, thank you, Maz. And yeah, I think you said it best before the call started, just based on recent events, the shooting in Buffalo, the shooting in Texas today, another deadly shooting following Sandy Hook. It is obviously a very tragic time, and I think all of us are have different emotions in the wake of events like this. I think, Maz, you mentioned anger, others profound sadness, confusion. So you may be feeling all of these things, one or the other, or you might feel a cascade of them over time. And so we wanted to start off the meeting this evening by taking a brief 30 seconds of silence to honor the lives that have been lost and maybe silently reflect about a way that we can commit to changing a society where this is normalized. So we'll start with 30 seconds. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Nadia, and thanks everyone. All right, so let me proceed with our agenda. We will try to move things quickly. We want to be very respectful of your time, and thank you again to all the wonderful candidates who agreed to participate. So I wanted to just quickly touch upon why we chose these races. So we wanted to make sure we focused on some of the competitive races in the county, ones that involved at least 2 Democrats running. And in the case of Catherine Blakespear's race, it's actually, I think, considered by some to be a toss-up. So I think your vote and your participation is even more important. We also wanted to focus on areas that had relatively high concentration of Iranian Americans. I'll confess there are no great statistics for that, but I think anecdotally we know roughly where the Iranian community is, and the Iranian community, for those of you, if this is your first time in this forum, there are, by some measures, upper bound of 1 million people of Iranian ancestry in the state of California. Some estimates put it at around 700,000. Most of them are in the Los Angeles and Orange County area, but San Diego also has its fair share of people with of Iranian Americans and people of Iranian background. And last but not least, we wanted to make sure that what we provided here could fit in a 1 hour. So please forgive us if we go a little over based on the participation level, but we're going to try to stick to the timeline. So full disclosure, all the Democrats running in the 4 races that we're featuring in tonight were invited to this forum, and most of them chose to participate, and some were unable to. So just a few quick ground rules for the candidates. Most of them, you probably have already seen this, maybe slightly modified version of this, which is we'll give you 2 minutes for to introduce yourselves, or up to 2 minutes. You can use it however you wish. We'll limit your answers to 2 minutes. And we may extend the time for a few minutes, meaning your segment may extend for a few minutes if we're getting more questions. Based on this, I think we're estimating being able to get at least 2 to 3 questions per candidate. and possibly 4. For those of you who want to ask questions, please raise your hand using the icons in Zoom. You can also type in your question in the chat when we open it to questions. But please forgive us if we don't get to your questions, just due to the limitation of time. So we also encourage our candidates to include their information in the chat line so people can contact them offline. And another thing that I want to note is that we are not, as a club, making any endorsements. So there's no pressure for getting endorsed. This is more about information and making sure that people are well informed before the June 7th primary. For the audience, we ask, again, I think I kind of went over this, please do use the Zoom icons, keep your questions succinct, make sure it's an actual question and not a statement. And okay, and one important thing is that in the case of the San Diego Council and the San Diego School Board races, please direct your questions to both candidates. So make an attempt to not make it specific to one particular candidate. Okay, and as I said, I'll go through this really quickly. We have 4 races. We have a map. Maybe what I'll do is turn it over to Nadia now, and I'll just leave it on this page so that people can see where the district is. So District 38, as an example, this is Senate District 38, covers the coastal regions that I'm showing in this map. And I'm sorry if it's not super clear, but it does go all the way to the, I believe, Mission Bay area of the coast, all the way up to parts of Orange County. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Nadia again.
Great. I think we can jump right in and get started here. So Mayor Blakespear, we'd love to hear your opening statement just about why you're running in this race, what you hope to accomplish in office for 2 minutes, and then we'll open it up to the group for questions.
Well, thank you so much. Thank you for inviting me to speak today. There's actually a third candidate who's a Republican. So there are 3 of us in this race who are all on the ballot right now. I'm Catherine Blakespear, and I've been in local elected office for what will be 8 years. So 6 as mayor in the city of Encinitas and 2 on the city council before that. And, you know, you were talking about gun violence at the beginning, and I think it's just really important to remember that the more guns we have in circulation, the more gun violence we'll have, the fewer, the less frequent that will be, and getting guns out of the wrong hands is really important. I think we need to, all people who own guns should have an insurance policy. Just like your car, if it kills someone, your gun, if it kills someone, your insurance policy should kick in, and people should have to pay for it and register and have it be public, just like we are with our cars, which are also deadly weapons. So I care about gun violence prevention. I think of it as something we need to be urgently working on, along with a lot of other issues. In general, my policy or my platform is people and planet, 2 Ps. We need to do more to help people living in poverty and make the social safety net function better, have fewer holes in it. And we need to actually address climate change in a more substantial way and be the environmental leader that we see ourselves as here in California. So voting's underway. I'm eager to earn your vote, and I'm grateful that you're interested and that you're helping support Democratic candidates all up and down the ballot. And so thank you for inviting me here, and I'd love to answer any questions you have. Am I close to my 2 minutes, or am I up?
You are under your 2 minutes. You're actually 125, okay, which is very impressive. Yeah, at this moment, if anyone has questions for Mayor Blakespear, we'd love to hear from you.
I do want to say we had some questions from our members who couldn't be here, so I might be putting some of those on chat as I just did right now.
Sure.
So we can go with those, but others, I encourage you to raise your hand.
So let's start off with this one, and then if I see other hands, please, or folks flag for me if someone's raising their hand and I don't see you. So I'll start off with this one. Do you support like CalCare, and what steps do you plan to take to overcome the for-profit healthcare industry that will inevitably work to defeat and undermine any reform?
Yes, I do support that. I think we need to do more to make sure that everybody is covered, that it's affordable. I am helping care for my indigent father and see firsthand the unbelievable difficulties there are getting the appropriate health care and also housing, for people who are older and sick. He's not very sick, but frail, weak, whatever all the different things are that happen at the end of life. And yeah, it's, this is a major battle. Like the question asks, inevitably will work to defeat and undermine any reform. We have to work harder. We have to work all together. We have to have our allies and march forward. We have to find a way to do it, that doesn't bankrupt the state. And I think there are ways to do that. It's really important. It'd be better if it happened at a federal level, but that doesn't seem at all likely. So, the state has to backfill it. We have to do what we can to make sure, we have to do everything we can to get there.
Thank you. Maury, I see you raising your hand.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor Blakespear, to be here on our program tonight. I have a question that I have asked many of our local politicians in the last 10 years. Nobody has given me a satisfactory answer.
Uh-oh. I don't know if I'm going to be able to then either.
I have a hunch that City of San Diego is not getting its fair share of taxes. And I asked that question from many politicians. Only one of them answered me a couple of years ago. That was a city council member of the city, and said she looked into it and somebody told her that the formula was set up in 1972. At that time, the city of San Diego had a lot less population than it does today. Somebody else told me that all of those taxes, property taxes, are actually for school districts, but that is not correct. Part of it is for the public.
Maury, can you ask your question? I'm sorry, there's two more people waiting.
Could you please look into this question on behalf of the people of the city of San Diego? Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Oh, sorry. Go ahead now.
I think it looks like Cody had his hand up next, Amira's on deck, and then Alexander following.
Thank you. I have a really simple question. We still have oil drilling off our coast. It's kind of hard to believe. We collected a 20-pound bag of tar in the last spill. How do we make sure it ends and we never get any more drilling again?
Well, I mean, it was very disappointing. Just yesterday, it didn't proceed forward in the legislature. There was a bill to ban it. And, it seems like we still truthfully have a lot of oil and gas influence in our politics. So, investing in renewable energy, creating the market and the pipeline, making it so that accepting oil and gas money is like accepting tobacco money or NRA money, or, I think that's really important. I do not support oil drilling, obviously. And I think we need to be much more aggressive at weaning ourselves off of our dependence on fossil fuels, because for our planet, I mean, look at the war in Ukraine. I mean, forever, our dependence, inflation, I mean, all of it is just the gas pump. I mean, and gas powers all parts of our economy. It's really troubling. And I would have voted for that bill, and it didn't move forward. So I agree with you that that's a really big problem.
Thank you. Amira, I think you're up next for a question.
I had a different question, but you kind of threw me off with your insurance requirement for the gun control.
Yes.
So I'm gonna use that one. Do you seriously think that having requirement for insurance would control gun ownership or shootings? Because how would that help? That's more like postpartum assistance than it is prevention. if people have automatic guns in their house, even if they insure it, I don't think that's going to prevent shootings at any point of time.
I mean, I guess
Can you expand on that? How would
Yeah.
that prevent?
Yeah, I think we need to have a highly regulated industry. We need to have licensing, we need to have insurance, we need to have a full system that creates a lot of bureaucratic barriers. Like, yeah, okay, so if we are committed in this country to owning a gun, which I don't necessarily think we should be, but if we're going to say that the Second Amendment, the way it's written, which is very confusingly written, is going to allow for people to have weapons of war or even a handgun. I mean, really, honestly, at all levels, to be armed, that we should make it so that we know exactly who those people are. We know what gun they have. We know what is their profile. We know whether they're safe. Just like driving, you have to take a driving test. You can't drive when you're too old because you might run over somebody. You know, there are all these things that go along with licensing and regulating. And I think all of that system needs to come down on the industry around gun ownership if we're actually going to be serious about trying to prevent gun violence. I mean, this is like the Wild West here, where anybody can get a gun on the internet, and ghost guns, you know, we ban them in my city. And, you know, we have safe storage ordinances. And basically, whenever I see a city that takes an action that I could do in my city of Encinitas, I do it. And a lot of it's come from the city of San Diego recently. But it's like, you know, the city of San Jose actually is moving forward with requiring insurance for gun owners. And I do think of it, it's not talked about at the state level, but I actually think it is the future. Like, to me, it seems like it's a really clear way for us to be much more involved in that industry.
Okay. Can I ask my second question or my actual question?
Amir, can I
Amir,
go to
Jan,
Alexander and
yeah.
then jump back to you?
Okay, sure.
And we can
Okay.
make that the last question then. Amira's would be the last one because we got to move
That
on.
sounds good. Thank you, Alexander. Please proceed with your question.
Well, I wanted to thank my friend Mas for inviting me to this event. Thanks, Mas. My question for you, Mayor, is on gun violence. And I joined in a little bit late to this event. Myself and my family have been victims of gun violence. We've lost family members to gun violence. So it's not,
Sorry.
my heart goes out to every time we see it on the news with people. And I agree that everybody should get a license, get a psychological test. But is it more than that? For example, I have a lot of friends that are Republicans, law-abiding citizens. They own guns. They don't commit any crimes. And they always tell me that restricting access to guns is not the solution. And they will give me examples like Switzerland and Israel, where every adult is able to serve in the military. They carry their rifles home, yet their gun violence is considerably really, really low compared to the US. And they will name examples like our friends to the south in Mexico, where it's illegal to own a gun, yet it has one of the highest murder rates in the world. And the cartels and criminals, they don't have to get a license, they don't have to get a permit, they just get it and they commit a crime. So what do you tell to those people that are law-abiding citizens and you make it harder on them to own a gun, yet the criminals get away with it because they get it in the black market?
Yeah, I mean, so what I hear you saying is a lot of different rationales and a lot of right-wing talking points, like, oh, the criminals are going to get guns anyway. The good guy kills the bad guy with the gun. And I guess I just go back to the reality that we, in New Zealand, they had a huge shooting and then they banned all these guns and they haven't had anything since, right? It was a recognition that it's kind of like, why don't we let a gun on an airplane? It's like, so maybe people would be safe. Maybe the good guy would kill the bad guy in the airplane. But no, in the end, we say there's too much potential for something really bad to happen. Like the whole plane could go down or all these people could get shot in a small area. And I feel like that's our society, but it's bigger, right? It's like we're all in a plane together. It's like, we could be, I think we should not have the ability to kill each other, especially, with the kind of guns that we allow in this country, people to own, like the semi-automatic rifles. And I mean, it's, I understand people want to protect their homes and there's all of that, but it's like law enforcement is there for a reason. Like vigilante justice is not our system, and having people who have them on the black market, we've successfully gotten rid of a lot of things on black markets. Like we don't have alcohol being sold on the black market for the most part. We don't have, we're legalizing marijuana now. We've, largely gotten rid of the mob and a lot of corruption things through basically serious enforcement. Like in America, serious enforcement works. And so I know that this is, whatever the talking points are for all the gun violence prevention groups might be different from what I'm saying, because in some ways I feel like I'm just much more like clear, but also extreme on this. Like to me, there's no benefit to it. We just end up with these mass shootings, and we end up with a lot more suicides, impulsive uses of guns, where because it's in the house, someone kills himself or kid shoots another kid. All that kind of stuff is just collateral damage that I find unacceptable. And I wouldn't, if I were reordering things, that we wouldn't have the premise of the Second Amendment, but we're obsessed. I mean, it's men who are obsessed with guns in this country. And it comes from a culture of hunting, kind of, but it also comes from, Alexander Hamilton was killed in a gun battle, and his son was killed in a gun battle before that, and he still ended up in one. Like, it's just part of our history in America, and we've been unable to wean ourselves from it. In the same way, racism is part of our American history.
Thanks for that.
Thank you, Mayor. Amira, if we could keep your questions short and Mayor, your answers short, so we can proceed and make sure we're respecting everyone's time, that would be wonderful.
Yeah, mine is very quick. I just wanted to see what your plans are for providing affordable homes. That's something I ask all of my candidates because that's very close to heart.
Yes. So housing supply is key. We don't have enough homes for people, especially
affordable housing supplies.
Yeah, especially at the lower income levels. We also, I think, need government to actually build more housing. We used to build public housing in this country, and we basically stopped doing that. I don't think exclusively deed restricted affordable public housing is the answer, because 93% of housing is built by the private market in California. But I do believe that the housing affordability crisis is central to the problems with homelessness and poverty in the state. And the income inequality that we are seeing continuing to widen, and the number of people living in conditions that are really basically not good, inhabitable, is the thing that we need to be working on the most. So I do think it's really important, and I'm glad you're asking every candidate about it, because it raises the profile.
Thank you. Was that short enough?
It was. Well done. I think there is some information in the chat for anyone who wants to learn more about Mayor Blakespear's campaign for the state Senate, and a link to get involved. So thank you so much for your time this evening. And Maz, I think we'll head on to the next race, which is for San Diego County Sheriff. I don't know if you want to flash that up.
Oh, yes, I will.
Here.
I will, but you guys can proceed.
Thank you. All right, I think today we'll start. Let me see if we've got Dave Myers here. I think I saw.
Hi there.
Hi, Dave. How's it going?
Oh my gosh, it's really busy. I just finished walking some neighborhoods and got invited over to speak to a group of neighbors. So I'm actually sitting in my car right now.
Okay, is now a good and safe time for you to talk? Okay,
yes.
Great. Perfect. Okay, so we're going to start off just learning a little bit more about you with the 2-minute opening statement about why you're running for sheriff for the county of San Diego.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And thank you for taking the time and recognizing with a moment of silence what happened in Texas today. It's an absolute travesty. And in my opinion, those incidents can be avoided. And I'm actually tired of these moments of silence. For those that don't know me, my name is Dave Myers, and I am running for San Diego Sheriff. I was born and raised here in San Diego County and spent 35 years in law enforcement here in San Diego County. I think the level of deaths in custody of the sheriff are atrocious, and it speaks directly to the complete lack of leadership at the sheriff's department, which is one of the reasons I'm running. We see racial profiling study after racial profiling study that shows that there's discriminatory policing practices in the San Diego County Sheriff's Department, yet the leadership denies the information, and it's their data. And what we're also seeing is a complete denial of what is happening within the San Diego Sheriff's Department when it comes to the sheriff runs a regional crime lab, and the regional crime lab still has not tested all sexual assault kits. We see a regional crime lab that was mismanaged to a point where the district attorney had to send a letter to defense bar in San Diego County warning that evidence could be tainted. 2 weeks ago, we saw where a 20-year-old case had to be dismissed because the evidence in the case was so mismanaged. And a woman spent nearly 2 decades in prison because of it. We don't have to put up with that. I'm running for sheriff because I believe now more than ever, we must restore trust and competency within the sheriff's leadership. I'm ready to do that. I have a history and a track record within law enforcement to bring positive change, to bring respect from community members, especially communities of color. And I have the ability and the desire to sit, even if it means just listening to communities and community members that may not agree with me all the time. I'm ready to do that to the department, which is the largest law enforcement agency in San Diego County, a department of 4,700 people, covering literally 4,200 square miles in San Diego County. I'm Dave Myers, and I'm running for sheriff.
Thank you, Dave, for sharing more about why you're running for sheriff. Does anyone else have questions for Dave this evening? Was that a hand, Maury? I'm not sure if it was. Oh, I think you're muted, Maury.
I'm just clapping.
Oh, I think you're muted again, but it looked like you were
I
clapping.
think he was just clapping. I think.
Okay.
Okay, I do have a question from the.
Oh, I think Paula has
members.
one, and then Maz will go with yours.
Okay.
Paula?
Thank you. Hi, Dave.
Hi.
You mentioned racial profiling, and that's a huge issue, and I agree. What ideas do you have to combat that?
No, very good question. So my idea is starting with who we hire and where we hire people from. What I can guarantee you I will not do, what the current leadership did was go to an anti-vaxxer rally and recruit deputy sheriffs. I can guarantee you I am not going to do that. I am going to go and recruit specifically in areas and target individuals in communities that reflect the population of San Diego County. I want to create an environment in which people want to come and work for the San Diego Sheriff's Department, even if it means we have to go outside of San Diego County to recruit the best candidates.
Got it. Thank you.
Thanks, Paula. Now, Maz, we can turn to your question.
Actually, they're not my they're members' question. I'm going to just put them in the chat. Maybe you can read them off.
Sure. Okay, so 2 questions here, Dave, from the membership.
Okay.
First is, what steps will you take to ensure law enforcement officers are well qualified, trained in de-escalation techniques and implicit bias, and basically aren't trigger happy?
Very, very good question. So does everybody know who Dr. Yan Lee is? Dr. Yan Lee was recently, the sheriff is responsible for serving eviction papers. It's a 2-step process. The sheriff goes and just serves the paper and then walks away, puts them on notice. In downtown San Diego, sheriff went to serve a notice of eviction. Dr. Yan Lee, clearly in a mental state. She's Chinese American. She when she was talking to the deputy on the video, the body worn camera video, it showed that she really didn't understand what was going on. She threw the paper at the deputy. At one point, she was holding a knife, never advanced on the deputy, never took a step, never raised the knife up, nothing. She threw the paper into her apartment 45 minutes later with guns drawn. They ended up shooting her to death in the threshold of her own apartment, and a police officer was stabbed. That is the very definition of what de-escalation is not. I think, number one, we need to ensure that the training the deputies receive in de-escalation is just as much as the number of hours they spend on the firing range. In California, the Peace Officer Standards and Training sets a minimum standard for training hours in de-escalation. That's the minimum hours. As sheriff, I intend to surpass the minimum hours required in cultural competency, in bias understanding, within our very, very unique communities of San Diego County.
Thank you so much. Another
You
follow-up.
guys hear the beep? I'm sorry, did you guys hear the beep?
Yes,
Oh, okay, just checking,
it's like dinner's ready.
just in time.
All right, one more question, Dave, from the membership, and anybody else who has a question, please share after this. What standards will you use to judge when a law enforcement officer has crossed the line? And what measures of accountability will you implement to serve as a deterrent?
Yeah, I'm going to use the exact same standards that we as law enforcement judge the community by. I was the one that came forward and spoke very publicly about Deputy Richard Fisher, who had sexually assaulted 20 women on duty. I was the one that came forward and discovered a sheriff's captain was trafficking in illegal firearms and running an illegal marijuana dispensary protection ring out of our Rancho San Diego station. I am going to be the best advocate for good, honest law enforcement deputy sheriffs. But the moment they cross that line, I am going to be the biggest advocate for holding them criminally, civilly liable for any violations of the law, just like we are expected to hold members of the community to.
Thank you so much, Dave, for joining us from your car out on the campaign. Looks like no one has any other questions at this time.
I think that's right.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Dave.
Yeah, we have less than 2 weeks. Ballots are out. Tell all your friends. I am the only candidate for sheriff who is supported by San Diegans for gun violence prevention in San Diego County. The other person claiming to be a Democrat is supported by the gun lobby here in San Diego County. That is extremely important to know. Thanks for your time tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dave.
Okay, Maz, I think we're heading on to the next race, the third out of the four this evening for San Diego City Council District 6. If you could flash that up on the screen, that would be
I'm working on it. Let me try
great.
that, but you guys can keep going.
So just by way of background, as he's pulling that up so folks can see the map, that District 6 for the City Council includes the neighborhoods of University City, Kearny Mesa, Mira Mesa, Miramar, Sorrento Valley, Scripps Ranch, and Rancho Encantada.
I'm so sorry. I'm like fumbling with this thing, but I will.
That's okay.
I will get there. I promise.
No, you're all good. I think we can start with hearing from the candidates. So let's start. We'll go just left to right here with candidate Kent Lee. Oh, looks like you pulled it up there. Two Democrats running in this race, Kent Lee and Tommy Hough. And Kent Lee, maybe you could start off. Let me see if I can see you here.
Good evening. Yep, I'm here.
Oh, lovely. Okay, hi.
All right. Yeah, thanks for giving me a moment. I had to switch from my phone to my computer. So
all good. The perpetual struggle.
Yes.
Okay, it would be great if you could start off with the two minutes, just explaining why you're running for this office. And afterwards, we'd love to actually Maz, are we going to go candidate by candidate? I think we'll both, for the two candidates who are here tonight, have them each introduce themselves, and then we'll proceed to the questions for both.
Yeah, I think we're going to do same question to both.
Great.
So
okay, so Kent, we'll
asking,
start off with you, and then Tommy, we'd love to hear from you
we'll
after.
do opening, sorry if you already said this, but we'll do opening statements each, and then we'll open it up questions.
That's perfect. So 2 minutes, please, Kent, just explaining why you're running for City Council District 6.
Great, thank you so much. Good evening, everyone, and it's great to see everyone here with the Iranian American Democratic Club. My name is Kent Lee. I'm running for San Diego City Council to represent District 6. As some of you may have heard over the course of time, I know I've met some of you through other clubs, but I'm actually a longtime resident of the district. My wife and I have lived here for about 15 years, and we're raising a 2- and 4-year-old here. I've been a longtime community volunteer, as well as someone who has served in the nonprofit community in San Diego in multiple capacities. I'm actually the executive director of Pacific Arts Movement, which helps to present the San Diego Asian Film Festival, and which actually through that have done a lot of work, especially in supporting Iranian American voices and films, often in partnership with the Petterson Cultural Center, just ensuring that we have a wide range of representation when it comes to our festival and our work. I've also had the opportunity to serve locally within our district. I'm currently on the Mira Mesa Community Planning Group, serving the UC San Diego Chancellor's Community Advisory Board, support small businesses through the Asian Business Association. And then during COVID-19 in particular, helped to start a coalition called the San Diego Asian Pacific Islander Coalition, which is a collection of about 35 organizations and growing largely in response to anti-Asian sentiment and hate and xenophobia during the pandemic. I'm here at the table and largely to run for city council, focus on a couple of key issues. One is specifically housing attainability for the middle income range. We talk a lot about affordable housing, but one of the things that's really missing in the last 2 decades within San Diego is actually middle income housing in particular. Looking to address how our government delivers responsive services. This includes infrastructure like streets, potholes and streetlights, but also updates that we need for our parks and libraries. And then finally also was really here running in part because I believe in having equity and representation as a part of our city council as well. So happy to answer your questions this evening, but also happy to connect with anyone who might be interested in learning about our campaign moving forward. So again, my name is Kent Lee, running for San Diego City Council. Thank you.
Sorry.
All good, Maz. Now we'd love to hear from Tommy Hough, also a candidate for San Diego City Council District 6.
Well, thank you, Nadia. I appreciate it. My name is Tommy Hough. I'm indeed running for San Diego City Council in District 6. I was the endorsed Democratic candidate for the D6 seat back in 2018. I ran against GOP incumbent Chris Cate that year. We did very, very well. We pulled up towards 47% with the vote that year, even after being outspent 30-1. So I'm running again for the seat. This is my second time running, and we're really focused more than anything else on restoring our infrastructure and our roads. And that has been a critical problem in District 6, and certainly in the historic District 6 communities, if you will. When I say historic, I mean the last 10 years of Mira Mesa and Kearney Mesa, Sorrento Valley, and Miramar. We have at least 24 roads in Mira Mesa that need to be rebuilt on an emergency basis. We have a real crisis right now, not just with housing, but also really with a housing affordability crisis. We have good opportunities to address that here in District 6. Actually, this may be the best place to go and address that solution, at least here in the city, certainly this cycle and over the next several years. We also have some new community plans that are being updated right now between Mira Mesa, University City, and then there's a brand new Kearney Mesa community plan that just went into effect. So we have some good options there to do densification if we want to pursue that. And we have to do that in conjunction with transit. But the reason I'm running, and the reason I ran back in 2018, and I know many of you from when I was running back in 2018 and before, when I started the San Diego County Democrats for Environmental Action, is because our district for about the last 15 years, ever since Brian Mainshine went to Sacramento, we've been represented by Carl DeMaio, Lori Zapf, and Chris Cate. That is not exemplary leadership. These are individuals who have come and gone and have not left our community in a better shape, nor have they really served as community leaders. If they weren't looking out for themselves, they were certainly looking out for downtown developers, downtown special interests, and the black tie donor crowd, and not the needs of our community. And as a result, the needs of downtown have been moved through our council seat over the last 15 years. I intend to break that cycle. We need to break that cycle. We've got to have a change with the leadership here in District 6. We need to have someone truly from the neighborhood who's truly speaking for our neighbors and not speaking for a lot of the downtown special interests or San Diego Gas and Electric and so on. So I'm happy to take any questions. I'm sure Kent is as well. And it's great to be here tonight. And I truly appreciate the opportunity to speak.
Thank you, Tommy. Let's start. I think Maz, I saw your hand first, and then we'll move to Maury and anyone else we get in the queue here.
Okay, it's actually, I wrote it down. So here it is. So this is for both of you. And Nadia, you can decide who goes first. Given the housing crisis, how would you balance the need for higher density and affordable housing against the interest of developers who wish to build higher income homes and vocal NIMBYs or NIMBY constituents?
You cut out a little bit for me. Was that the case for others too? Did everyone hear the question all right? Is that a yes? Do we, let's try it again.
Let me try it again.
Let's roll that back, yeah.
Sorry, it's probably my internet connection.
No, you're good.
Given the housing crisis, how would you balance the need for higher density and affordable housing against the interest of developers who wish to build higher income homes and vocal NIMBY constituents?
Okay, great. Maz, do you want to play rock, paper, scissors really quickly?
Sure.
Okay, so if you win, Tommy goes first, and
There you go.
if I win, Kent goes first.
Okay.
Okay. Rock, paper, scissors.
I lost.
So mine is Kent goes first.
I love
That is
it.
a good way to determine it. Thank you. And thanks, Mas, for that question as well. So yeah, so one of the core tenets of my campaign has been focused specifically on housing. A lot of times we hear about communities talking about the affordability of housing, and certainly that's one component of it. But the reality is when you look at our housing development numbers over the last 2 decades, what you find is that we have built an overabundance of high-end homes, and you see a lot of those in new communities, millions of dollars and up. And we've built a fraction of affordable housing, and affordable in the technical term, but in the middle of that, like everyday San Diegans, which is a significant range, we've built something like 50-something homes. And that's exactly what we're missing. And so I think there's no question that as we update our community plans, as we're looking at the potential of housing development, density is a component of that. It needs to be built where it makes sense. We have a lot of opportunity, especially in communities like the Kearny Mesa community, where they have a brand new plan update that allows for significant density. That's a big shift. But in doing that, I think the other challenge we have is how do we actually take and compel a lot of our developers to build in the middle income range. Right now, it's very easy for them to build at that upper end range because that's the most profitable opportunity. At the lowest range, we offer a sense of subsidies, incentives, and other tools that we use to encourage that. I think part of that secret is looking at how we look at housing finance, where public finance comes into play, and how we ensure that as a community, we're actually going to find methods in which we're going to compel developers to actually build within that range, whether it's saving them from time or from a finance perspective. I think that actually is something that can be done. And that until we do that, we're going to continue to see sort of this housing development either on the upper end or the lower end. And again, missing very much in the middle.
Sorry to just interject here, but I do have a 2-minute timer, and you did great, Kent. But just wanted to know that's what the beeper is. Try to keep it to 2 minutes, and some of you weren't there at the beginning.
Thank you.
There's the beep.
Tommy, we're ready for you.
Thank you, Nadia. And yes, thank you, Maz. As I always say, it's a good idea to rigidly time politicians. So, Maz's question was really a rather far-reaching question about housing, but it was really about how do you strike a balance between the need for additional housing, but also the need for affordable housing? Where do you wind up putting it? And I mentioned in my opening remarks that we actually have some good opportunities within District 6 to actually do densification if that's something that we as communities decide we want to pursue. Now, we have a really good opportunity right now with the new Kearny Mesa community plan to potentially do some densification that could be to the east of Convoy and to the west of the 163. The catch is you want to make sure that in the process of doing that, you're not gentrifying the neighborhood so much that you're pushing out a lot of the small businesses and small restaurants that were able to make headway in the Convoy area in the first place, as it was zoned as a warehouse district. So that's something that we got to think about in the first place. But overall in District 6, we are not encumbered by a height limit. We don't have the coastal height limit that everyone certainly west of the 5 does. And so when you look at the city twisting itself into pretzels as to how to get around that, I think they're missing the boat. I think we have the opportunities to actually do that here in D6. We can build up. Certainly the opportunities are there in Kearny Mesa to do that. We have another project going online called Stone Creek in the next few years in Mira Mesa, where that could be done. It depends on really what the developer comes up with. We have some opportunities, not 20 stories, but certainly at least build upon some of the empty office parks and warehouses and large parking lot spaces on the north side of Miramar Road. So we have good opportunities for that. And above all else, and it's important to remember this, we would be within the job centers, within the transit centers or places we could bring transit, and within the built footprint. And I would just say that as far as getting a balance in, you know, whenever politicians are talking about affordable housing, they're probably lying, because we know as well as anyone else does that developers can't afford to build affordable housing unless it's developer subsidized, unless it's government subsidized. We really aren't in a place where that can be done in an effective way. So on one hand, I'm not going to let the free market go crazy without any sort of restrictions to build more housing that no one can afford. We have enough of that right now in District 6 as well. Look at this 3 routes. People are paying $1.1 million for a shared wall. That's not properties that kids.
Tommy, we're over time. We're over time.
Oh, I apologize. I didn't hear the beeping go off, probably because I was talking the entire time. But I'd be happy to speak more about this. Obviously, as you can tell, this is a passion thing for me.
Thanks, Tommy. I think next I saw Maury and then Alexander, and that'll be the extent of the questions we asked this round to respect people's time this evening.
Thank you both candidates to be on our meeting today. The question that I have is with regards to a huge project that's going to bankrupt the city of San Diego. This was called toilet to tap for the water crisis that we have, but then they hired some consultants and they changed the name to Pure Water. That was estimated to cost $3.5 billion 4 years ago when I attended as a community member in the meetings that they had. Now, with the state approving that these type of contracts should be with prevailing wages and that the prices have gone up for materials, this is probably going to cost perhaps $7 to $10 billion. At that time, when we attended those meetings, they said the reason they chose this project was because it was less expensive than desalination plants. The state of Israel and many other countries, they have used desalination plants for the last 70 years.
Maury John, we're short on time. What is your question?
So what are you going to do with this kind of project that's going to bankrupt the city and the water is not going to be safe as drinking water?
Sorry, Tommy, we'll start with you. We'll flip the other way now.
Sure, no problem. I mean, honestly, Maury, my feeling is pure water is something that we as a community must invest in. And Orange County's been doing this for about 15 years now. And everyone's doing fine and getting around in Orange County okay. And in fact, we already drink a great deal of recycled water anyway. We are at the end of a lengthy cycle of use. San Diego gets its water from 3 points along the Colorado River. So we're drinking yesterday's water from Las Vegas, yesterday's water from Phoenix, and from the Imperial Valley. So it makes sense that we would be doing recycled water. But let's also remember here that part of the reason that we're doing pure water in the first place is because we continue to emit a great deal of sewage through the Point Loma outfall. That's a deal that we have with the EPA that that allows us to keep throwing the sewage out there. Part of the deal was if we were recycling our water, not all of that water would be heading out for the sewage port to going out to sea. And then that was part of the deal that we made with the EPA. But I do think that recycled water is a responsible and effective thing to do. We can recycle water by using gravity, which ultimately that's what will occur with the pipeline that goes up to Lake Miramar. Now, as your council member, what it's going to be my job is to watch like a hawk while that construction is going on, make sure it's getting done effective, it's not taking up time, and that we're not wasting time or money on it, and that it's actually making progress. That has to get done. I wish that the line for the Pure Water project was going up along the 805. I had absolutely spoken about in favor of that when I ran back in 2018. I criticized Lori Zapp for not making a call to Caltrans to begin the process of facilitating that. Now it's going to be Steel Plate City along Miramar Road all summer long, if we're lucky.
10 seconds.
To go to address Pure Water. But I do think it's a responsible investment, and considering how dry this area is and how the Colorado River is no longer a reliable source of water, we need to find other opportunities.
What about the solution, the Israeli solution? Why don't we look at how they have done?
We're not going to be able to address.
I'm happy to talk with you more about it, buddy. I love talking about these topics, so we're happy to chat with you more about it.
Thank you, Maury. We don't have time for follow-up questions, but Tommy, I think at some point, and Kent will both share their information in the chat so folks can follow up with questions. Kent, now we'd love to hear from you.
Yeah, I think this is one place where we definitely agree that, the entire state is actually dealing with significant water issues at the moment. We're talking about the governor looking at issuing another drought warning across the state, and San Diego is certainly in a better position than a lot of other regions, but we're not going to be protected from that forever. So I do think that Pure Water is an investment that is for our future. I mean, right now, currently projected, it's looking to provide up to 40% of our water supply once it's completed, and that is a pretty significant amount in a place where we are very dependent on other water sources at the moment, and without diversification, that can be really challenging. I do think that there are a couple of things that go with that as well, though. Maury, I know you talked about desalinization, and I know that's something that's been done in other countries as well. But I know some of the studies that have shown attempts that we've had here, even in Southern California, have been extremely pricey and energy intensive. And part of that is because they're privatized, or they're not publicly run. And I think that's part of the challenge. If we're going to pursue technology like that has been successful in other countries, we've got to do it from a public standpoint. That's likely part of why the Coastal Commission ended up shooting down a similar project in Orange County even just recently. And so, ultimately, we may be in a position right now where we're not facing the drought issues that some other areas within the state are, but it is something that is going to continuously plague us. The last thing I would note is that San Diego itself has also identified that we're extremely short when it comes to stormwater infrastructure as well. And part of that, and maybe part of our greatest opportunity, is looking at how we capture stormwater and deliver that into our water system so that could be part of what's recycled for use. Again, because it could be a significant factor in terms of diversifying our water supply. Thanks.
Thank you. And I think we have a final question from Alexander. If you could kindly keep it short to the extent you are able, we would be so gracious.
Of all the problems we have, right, gone by global warming, water.
Yeah.
My question to you is that I think we also have a crisis in the state of California and in San Diego with homeless people. And not enough is being said or discussed. It's almost as if being ignored. But how could that be that the richest country in the world, in the richest state of that richest country, and probably one of the richest city of the richest state in the richest country in the world, can have so little compassion for people who need help, mental, or they have drug abuse, for whatever reason they ended up on the street. And I think they need help, and the city or the state or the politicians are not saying or doing enough about it. What are your plans to help alleviate or solve that problem?
Thank you. I think this time we'll start with Kent.
Thank you. I agree. I mean, this is a problem that is one of the most complex in our region, and it's absolutely one that we need to be addressing, and from a sense of compassion. I think for far too long, what we've seen oftentimes is that the most immediate response when it comes to addressing homelessness has often been to utilize law enforcement. And I think we've seen time and time again that criminalizing it and simply holding folks for 72 hours, for example, just to leave them back in the street, not only is not effective, but ends up becoming a significant tax on our dollars. And really, the reality is that we've actually spent tons of money as a region trying to address homelessness. And yet we're seeing that money in many ways being wasted. What I believe we need is really a strategic response that combines efforts at the county level and at our local city levels. Homelessness does not, it's not like it ignores borders between the city of San Diego and our surrounding municipalities. And so we really need to find ways to work together. And a lot of it, if we're going to do it from compassion, comes from a stance of meeting people where they're at. I think we have to understand that for a lot of folks who are facing homelessness, their situations are all individually different. And that means that the responses that we have for those individuals need to be tailored to that as well. So for families who, for example, are facing homelessness because they've lost their job, they may be living out of their car, they're still trying to get to work, get their kids to school, their needs are a little bit different. That's where the county over the last couple of years set up safe parking sites, for example, across the county to allow families places where they could stay overnight with access to facilities so that they could be safe while they're still trying to get back on their feet. For those who are facing mental health or behavioral health issues, that's where we need very specific resources. For example, the county and the city have worked together to establish mental health, behavioral health shelters, for example, specifically with services to address those needs. And then finally,
10 seconds.
And finally, again, just none of these are one size fits all. And ultimately, we need permanent supportive housing. It's a long-term process to build the housing needed to support those who are facing homelessness. But until we have that from a long-term perspective, we're going to need a lot of these short-term measures to get by as well.
Fine, thank you.
Thank you both. Again, that was Kent Lee and Tommy Hough, who are running for San Diego City Council.
Tommy didn't answer the last one, did he?
Oh my gosh, sorry, Tommy.
No
That's
worries.
okay. I was about to leap in, but thank you. I appreciate it.
No, thank you. Sorry.
No, it's quite all right. I mean, Alexander, I mean, the answer is the city must invest in permanent supportive housing because what we're doing now, which is next to nothing, is not effective, is not working, and frankly, is cruel. Police know when they are citing someone for vagrancy that they don't have an address, they're not going to show up in court, and if they're in a manic situation or some kind of psychological situation, the officer knows it's cruel, everybody around them knows it's cruel. So the first thing we have to do is remove law enforcement from being a component in addressing the homeless crisis. Now, that doesn't mean that if someone's attacking, utility boxes with a knife, which just happened yesterday in District 6 in Mira Mesa, that, you don't call the police, that's a public safety matter. But overall, the city has to invest in permanent supportive housing. Essentially what happened, Alexander, 50 years ago when Reagan was president, was he shut down the state hospital system. And that was the beginning of California's modern homeless crisis. And it began to shift the burden of addressing homelessness from the state to communities. And that was one of the ways that Republicans tried to balance the books back in 1970, but we're still paying the price for that. So we have to have facilities where individuals live with the quote unquote wraparound services that address the reasons why you might have become homeless, psychological issues that were incumbent upon how you became homeless, and the PTSD that you've accumulated while you've been homeless. And those are going to take many different shapes and forms. For example, there were two locations in Claremont that went online over the last couple of years that I dealt with when I was running in 2018 that are both successful. And guess what? One's developer subsidized, one's government subsidized. I'd like to talk with you all more about these issues that we spoke about. We barely scratched the surface. I'll put my contact information in the chat if that's okay with everyone here, but great question.
Thank you.
Of course, yeah, Tommy, we encourage that. So thank you. That was Tommy Hough and Kent Lee, who are running for San Diego City Council District 6. And I think they're both going to put their contact info in the chat so you can learn more about their races. And now for our final
Actually,
race.
Nadia, just before you go to the final one, I just want to interject for a quick second to, first of all, great participation, great meeting. I just wanted to ask everyone to, as part of this exercise, let's keep our elected officials accountable also. So this is a good opportunity for you to ask questions, but also hold these politicians to account, these candidates to account. And I think they would welcome that. I think they would agree that this is the part of democracy. So just wanted to throw that in there. And I hope you guys stay till the end. So thank you for your participation.
Thank you, Maz. So last but certainly not the least is the race for, and it's coming up, San Diego Unified School Board District C. We have two candidates this evening, Lily Higman and Cody Petterson. So I don't know, I think I maybe scared Maz a little bit with my rock, paper, scissors. So maybe we'll just go left to right for this one. Lily,
No, I want a rematch. I want a rematch.
You want a rematch? Fine.
Yeah.
Okay, fine. So if you win, Lily goes first.
Sure.
And if I win, Cody goes first. All
Okay,
right.
go ahead.
But make it visible because yours was kind of low before. Okay.
No cheating.
Ready? Rock, paper, scissors.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. I think you
that
win,
means
but
Lily,
it was slow.
Lily goes first.
I think Lily goes first.
All right. I'm liking this.
All right.
Great. Thank
Lily,
you all.
So, yes, again, as a quick reminder, 2-minute introductions about why you're running for the race, in this race for school board.
Great. Thank you all for having me here tonight. My name is Lily Higman and I'm running for school board. We chose to move to San Diego about 11 years ago when my kids were 3, 5, and 7. And we chose diversity, which I needed. We were living in South Dakota at the time. Since day one, I volunteered in the kids' classrooms. I did pull-out groups for reading, art. I worked on the garden. You know, anything and everything that teachers needed me to do, I did. And then I became PTA president. And then I became the cluster chair for 2 non-consecutive years. And then during that time, I was a part of many district advisory councils for low-income students, for gifted and talented, as well as other advisory councils. I am running for board because I think that our board currently has failed our students, and I think we need to do something different, and I want to challenge the status quo. Prior to having kids, I was a telecom executive and managing multi-million-dollar budgets. We also had a series of small businesses, both my family and myself and my husband. And I also worked overseas on an Olympic bid where I worked with high-level foreign diplomats. You know, I just think who better than to represent our students, our low-income students, our immigrant students, our English language learner students than me. I was all 3 of those. I am all 3 of those. And whether it's advocating for them at the local level or in Sacramento or in DC, I would represent them personally because I've had that shared experience with them. I want to be the voice of parents, students, and the teachers. I've been knocking on doors and talking to lots of parents as well as teachers, and they just don't feel like they're being heard, especially these last few years. I have so many local teachers that are supporting me and they're fighting for me and they're out there talking about me, and I really appreciate that. So I'd be honored to answer your questions, and I'd be honored to serve on the board. Thank you.
Right on the dot.
Oh,
Thank
awesome.
you, Lily. Now we'd love to hear from Cody too.
Thank you so much. I'm Dr. Cody Petterson. Thank you for the opportunity. It's good to see all of you again. My mother-in-law is Tehrani, and this club always feels like home. I want to start by acknowledging the 18 children and 3 adults at Robb Elementary in Uvalde. As a parent of 2 elementary school children, there's really nothing as terrifying. You kind of see that news come in and it shocks you because it's really just at this point in this country, it's basically a crapshoot. And we've really got to stop this insanity. I'm running for school board to be a champion for the students, teachers, and staff of San Diego Unified to fight for significant increases in per pupil funding, universal preschool, community schools, and mental health support and high dosage tutoring to help students and staff, frankly, recover psychologically and academically from the pandemic. I'm a 46-year resident of the district, a product of San Diego Unified, a UCSD lecturer, a policymaker, and a father. I have deep lifelong roots in our community. I was brought home from University Hospital to Mesa grad student apartments. I attended K through 12 in San Diego Unified. I did my PhD in the UCSD anthropology department, where I'm now a lecturer. I'm the proud father of a kindergartner and a third grader at Torrey Pines Elementary, where I serve on the school site council and site governance team. I sit on the La Jolla Town Council. I'm on the board of the San Diego National Sister Cities Association. I'm immediate past president of the San Diego County Democrats for Environmental Action and a former Sierra Club San Diego XCOM member. And I work for Supervisor Lawson Reamer, where I help navigate policy change through a vast, complicated $7 billion organization. For the last half decade, I've worked with Educate for the Future to help plan, organize, and MC public education trainings, workshops, and summits in public education policy, including budgeting, Brown Act, special education policy and funding, learning loss recovery, science-based closure and reopening, restorative practices, et cetera. I'm endorsed by the 7,000 Teachers of San Diego Education Association, the Administrators Association of San Diego, the American Federation of Teachers, and the San Diego County Democratic Party. I recognize you're not endorsing tonight, but it's a pleasure to talk to you all. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Petterson. And now we'd like to hear from anyone who has a question. Oh, it looks like someone just, that was Tommy in the chat. Does anyone have any questions for Cody and Lily?
I do have a couple of member questions, but I'll hold to see if any.
Sure.
I guess since there's no question, let me try to put one of them on. I actually have a total of 3. Still no hands raised, right?
Not yet.
Okay, I'll put all 3 here on the chat. 1 second.
Okay, so 3 questions from our membership, but if anyone has a question in the meanwhile, yours will take precedence over these. So feel free to ask a question and not feel like you're in the back of the line. So the first question from the membership is, what subjects or curriculums do you see lacking or deficient in the school district, and how do you intend to address it? So I think last time Lily went first. So Cody, if you could answer that question.
Thank you. I appreciate it. What I'd like to answer that by talking a little bit about the impacts of COVID and the pandemic and sort of 2 years of disrupted learning of students. And I think we have preliminary data already on what the impacts have been. And really the core impact has been to widen the pre-existing achievement gap. So we're seeing high-income students experiencing about a 1-month learning lag from where we would anticipate them being had the pandemic not been there or projected them being. Whereas English language learners, Latino students, low-income students are in relation and mathematics. And so I think what needs to happen is we need to do this. We need to really invest in many of the same practices we use to the best practices that we need to, we need to invest in high dosage tutoring, which means individual or small group tutoring multiple times a week in the curriculum in which classes are taught. We need to invest in enriched after-school programming for at-risk students, and we need to invest in summer programming like the Level Up program we're currently doing right now. And I would say, so broadly speaking, that's what I would say is we really need to invest both in literacy and mathematics, but we need to identify those students who are most impacted by COVID and reduce that learning lag.
Thank you, Lily.
So thank you. So as far as the curriculum goes, I think we have everything we need. We have the classes, we have the history, we have the math, we have all the curriculum, but what we haven't found a solution to is the achievement gap. We've had this achievement gap forever and really have not made advancements towards shrinking that achievement gap. So what we need to do is identify those students early. I've been in the classrooms, I'm not a teacher, but I've been in the classrooms, you know, like I said, from day one when my kids were in elementary school. We know who those kids are. The teachers know who those kids are that are at risk of falling behind. So we need to get them into smaller groups faster, earlier. We've done many tutoring programs at PB Middle School where my kids went to school, and as well as at Mission Bay High School, where we do these tutoring programs that are all encompassing, and that really, we've had so much success. So we know what to do. We just need to do it and keep flip-flopping between different curriculums, and how you teach is not helping the kids and it's not helping the teachers. So we need to stick to something we know and do it and replicate it in different places, in different schools, so that these kids can stay caught up. Thank you.
Thank you. I think, Dustin, you had a question.
Hey, thank you.
Hi, thank you.
Yeah. So I think you hinted at this earlier in your answers, but I want to ask about the achievement gap, not just within schools, but actually also across schools, like across the district. So just anecdotally, I went to public schools in City Heights, and I remember when I was in high school, just to try and get good after school programs or internships or anything, I was taking buses for 2 hours up to UCSD. And this was before the trolley extension opened, right? Mm-hmm. So I wanted to ask, not focusing only in your district, which I saw was La Jolla, University City. These are already great schools, but now you're also going to be impacting schools across the entire district. And how do you plan to make that more equitable, like you were mentioning with closing the achievement gap? Thank you.
Thank you. I think we'll have Lily start with this question and then Cody.
Absolutely. That's a great question. And, when I talk about the achievement gap, I'm talking about district-wide. And I think we need to get into those communities where there is that wide gap and focus on what the students there need. So for example, last year we left $4 million, the district left $4 million, the schools left $4 million on the table because they didn't use their Title I funds, which is for low-income students. And like you said, in those low-income areas of San Diego, we need to make sure, and I was on the DAC, which is the District Advisory Council for Compensatory Education, where we discuss these things about the low-income students, the Title I students. We need to share with each other our best practices across schools, right? Across the district, so that these schools that have this money left don't have to leave it on the table and give it back to the district to spend who knows how, and use that money for their students. And what was I going to say? I lost my train of thought. And we know, again, how to do this. There are good examples and best practices all over our schools as well as across the country. So we need to just implement them and not leave money on the table so that the kids don't get what they need. Thank you.
Cody.
Yeah, this is obviously a core question. What I'll say right out of the gate, as you noted, this is a very affluent district. It's Point Loma, La Jolla, and University City. It's intended to be that way so that the remaining 4 districts will be majority minority. So it's not an error, but it does mean that you have to balance doing constituent services for your district, because no other board member is going to respond in the same way to schools in your district. But you also have to represent the entirety, and that's one of the challenges of being a school board member. And a lot of folks, if you're in this sub-district, it's very easy to lose track of the fact that this is a large urban school district. It is 60% of students qualify for free and reduced price meals. A lot of Title I schools. We, in this state, we have local control funding formula now with what's called supplemental and concentration funding. The governor has put in, we have a May revise of $20 billion additional dollars. It's the most that's ever been spent, $128 billion total budget. So we are investing in closing that achievement gap. Let me just flag, this is not just a challenge for schools. I'd love to get in depth about this, but we have an expanding, as someone already mentioned, we have an expanding wealth and income inequality in this state and in this region. We have the highest poverty rate in the country. So we're asking schools to address an achievement gap that's core is about a wealth and inequality gap and an opportunity gap. So I think universal transitional kindergarten is fundamental. You have to start very young. There's a continuum of childcare. We're in a childcare crisis. Universal TK is important. We have to get universal TK right, because so much of this gap originates in those early years, and the lack of opportunity in those early years, and the lack of enriching cognitive environment in those early years. So number one, we need to get universal TK right. Number two, this is ultimately about investment. We recognize the research is very clear. You need additional investment for low-income students and students that may be coming out of social environments that are very challenging. So we are actually with LCFF providing $2,000 to $3,000 more per student to those low-income schools, but we have to continue that. And again, we have to implement exactly those policies we already know to close achievement gap and to close the COVID gap. They're really, in essence, the same gap, just aggregated.
Thank you.
Thank you. Sorry, I moved fast.
Sorry, I forgot to give the warning.
That's okay.
You're all good. Okay, it looks like Paula has her hand up, and then not to impose on Cody and Lily's time, but would you also be able to stick around for the last two questions in the chat? Okay, I know it's already getting late. For Iranians, we're only like 10 minutes behind, which is incredible. In a good way. I think this is pretty good for us. So Paula, please take it away with your question.
Okay, thank you. And I'll try to make this quick. One of my big concerns in America and in our education in general is the lack of adult Americans having the ability to think critically. They're susceptible to propaganda. They have biases that they're unaware of. And I know Common Core addresses critical thinking, but they do it in a general way. Would you be supportive of elective courses being developed in ethics and logic? Anything that really targets this kind of thinking for students, probably high school. Any interest in that?
I think this time we're starting with Cody, and then we'll go to Lily.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I mean, obviously that sounds wonderful. What I would say is, if I can answer that question about critical thinking by talking about something that a number of teachers have spoken to me about universal transitional kindergarten. Mm-hmm. We're seeing increasing data that in terms of executive function and critical thinking, that play-based learning in those early years is very important. The more structure you have in those early years, really you're hampering a child's ability to develop that executive functioning. And one of the things that I'm hearing again and again from teachers is that our current way, we're now shifting to universal transitional kindergarten in the district. We've done a pilot, we've done some pilots, but there are a lot of challenges right now in implementation. Currently, you have we're slated to have a preschool teacher and a certificated teacher in each transitional kindergarten classroom. There are a lot of difficulties with that. There's some awkwardness in terms of that. The teachers and the preschool teachers and the certificated teachers do not have an opportunity to self-select and kind of work and develop a good relationship. But also I'm getting a lot of feedback from teachers saying that currently the curriculum at Universal Transitional Kindergarten and kindergarten is frankly not adequately play-based, and therefore it's not developmentally appropriate. So I do think in terms of curriculum, we do need to address some challenges around the curriculum in Universal Transitional Kindergarten and kindergarten to, amongst other things, develop executive function and critical thinking in those early ages.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Lily.
Okay, I just want to address that early childhood education piece first, because Cody was talking about it, and it does make a lot of sense. I agree with him because my son actually went to TK, and basically he had the same curriculum as the kindergartners. That doesn't work. They shouldn't be doing that. I've talked to many early childhood experts, and they said the way we're doing that is so wrong. And I'm just so afraid that we're going to do that again, especially with 4-year-olds, right? Because TK was mostly, late 4 to 5-year-olds. Now we're going to expand that into early 4-year-olds. So we have to do it right. And that's one of the things that I want to make sure we do when we get there. But I think your question about thinking critically, I'm really lucky that my kids go to an IB school and they're taught the International Baccalaureate program, and the IB program goes throughout our mission-based cluster. And the kids are really taught to think critically, not just in name, but in every aspect of every class that they take. And I think we could learn from our IB programs to expand that out into other schools so that the kids do learn to think critically. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you both. We have 2 final questions from our membership, and then I think public announcements, any comments at the end, and then we'll be off into our evening. So next question, I think Lily will start with this one. Do you believe the charter schools in the school district should have less or more autonomy, and why?
I guess my question would be more or less autonomy than they have now, or than traditional public schools. So the charter schools have a certain level of autonomy, right? They have their own governance teams, administration and all that, but they are under very strict overview guidelines. They get reviewed every 2 to 5 years. So in many cases, their oversight is much more stringent than our traditional schools. So this district has made charter schools the enemy. Yes, they do take money away from our schools because kids equals money. You know, it's sad to put it that way. But as a parent, you know, what do you want? You would want the option to put your child somewhere where it's going to fit them, right? But then as a district board member, I have to make sure every charter school is adhering to their guidelines and, you know, what they say they're going to do, and make sure they're within the laws of their charters and all that, to make sure they're doing what they should be doing to educate the kids. Many schools have lost charters. Some charter schools are doing fine because they do go through those review processes and they're doing great. So, I mean, it's kind of a double-edged sword, but I would not make charter schools the enemy, because what I'd like to focus on as a district board member is to improve our own schools. Once we improve our schools, you know, the kids will come back. Every year we have many kids coming back to Mission Bay High School from charter schools, and they find success at our school. Thank you.
Thank you, Cody.
Yeah.
And just to clarify, the question is about more autonomy than they have today.
Yes. Okay. So I'd answer that by saying I think that autonomy is not I wouldn't frame it exactly in terms of autonomy. What I think is essential, our 1992 governing law for charter schools really envisioned charter schools as having as being sort of laboratories for pedagogical and administrative and curriculum experimentation, where there would be a a feedback relationship between the charter industry and the public schools. We're not having that in the way we should, really. It would be great to foster that. There are some particularly small charters in relation to math that are outperforming. In large part, charters and public schools have comparable outcomes in terms of learning performance. The one thing I said, I've been involved with the Education Coalition here with Cheryl Coney and in fighting for the unionization of High Tech High and Gompers, and I think it's fundamental. Labor practices are fundamental in charter industry, and we have to fight for. And I personally have been supportive of unionization movements within the charter movement. I would say additionally, what I would say, I've been supportive of efforts to ensure that charters have publicly representative boards. They're receiving taxpayer money. They should have publicly representative boards. They should have the same transparency laws that public schools have. In large part, it's about creating parity between the public school system and the charter school system. Charter schools are part of our system. I'm not opposed to charter schools, but the reality is if charter schools proliferate, they take money on a per capita basis, and that can only the variable costs can be replaced. You cannot replace the fixed costs. So if you have a proliferation, there's really some serious problems for the public schools. There's basically there is a slow process of erosion where you cannot replace those losses, and eventually you have to close libraries, and then you have to close programs, and then eventually you have to close those schools. So we do have to watch out. Transparency and accountability is pretty fun, and labor organizing is fundamental to that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Nadia,
Sure.
Nadia, I was just going to say, we can skip my last question because I think I see Paula has a question.
Oh, I think she might have had the hand icon up. Is that right? Okay.
Oh, okay.
That's what. So we'll finish with this final question, and I think Cody will start with this one, and Lily will finish it. What is the biggest lesson you've learned in the last 2 years that you believe the school board hasn't learned or needs to do better in the next few years? Cody.
Yeah, thank you. I think There's a couple things I'll point out through participation in this school site council and site governance team. I really think there is inadequate site level autonomy. I think that's clear to anybody who's served. The budgets are just laughable. When I first came on, they said, yeah, our budget's 51,000. I said, a month? They said, no, all year for a school of 400, and 8,000's right out the door for the photocopier, literally. I mean, there is inadequate autonomy, which leaves both parents and teachers and principals feeling like they really don't have effective control or a way to influence the way in which their site culture and practice evolves. But I would say even more fundamental, there is a genuine communication problem at this district. You can go on a board meeting and you can sense right away that there is not an adequate back and forth and acknowledgement of comment from the dais. And we saw that in Patrick Henry. There's several take homes from the Patrick Henry situation, but one of the main ones is large decisions, significant decisions. You have to have a community engagement process. And that doesn't mean talking to the three parents on your site governance team. You literally have to bring together the community and you have to communicate. And that means transparency. And it means not just you're communicating, you're telling them what you're about to do, it's that you are including the community in that process. So that's one thing that I do think this board has some challenges in regard to that. And I've told them personally, and I'll say it publicly.
Thank you, Lily.
Actually agree with Cody on both those points. Having been on many of these committees and having been on the first LCAP, which is a local control accountability plan group back in 2013, the district acts as if they want parent input, and they put us in a room. You know, I don't know how many Saturdays I've given up for all these meetings on the LCAP committee, on the DAC, on the calendar committee. They give this air of, oh, we want your input, but they really don't. So, you know, we can say all we want that, you know, oh yeah, let's bring these people together. But until you have real meaningful input from the parents and you actually take that input and do something with it, nothing good is going to happen. I think tonight at the board meeting, they just talked about having student board members be able to vote, you know, just like a board member. They turn that down. Well, because they don't want to give up control, right? They don't want to give up control of the board and of the decisions. But I think parent voice, how many times have I stood in front of the board asking them for something, asking them for information, and they haven't given it to me or any other parent? So meaningful parent involvement, not just get everyone in a room, check a box and say, oh, we got parent involvement because there were 100 people in this room. That is not parent input. So having real meaningful voices of the parents, of the students, and the teachers. How many curriculum do they have to give out to the teachers before they actually get their input, before, you know, telling them what to do? We pay consultants $500,000 for new math curriculum. The teachers are like, we don't want this. This isn't what will work for the kids. So real meaningful input from everybody. Thank you.
Thank you both so much, Cody and Lily. And I hope you'll both leave your information in the chat if you haven't already, so folks can learn more about your campaigns and connect with you. So, and everybody, thank you for your grace with me this evening. I'm a brand new member and Maz handed the reins over. So I got a little sheet here that I'm kind of going back and forth to keep track of things. So thank you, everyone, this evening. It's been a good first foray into moderating and trying to keep time in this group. So thank you.
Thank you, Nadia. I'm not sure how we survived all those years without you. I really don't.
Good job.
Throw right out of the gate.
Yeah. I think you're putting all of us to shame. But no, thank you very much. Thank you for all the candidates for running and for participating in this. I know your time is very precious, especially right now with 2 weeks away from the June 7th primary. So again, we hope to see you guys again after the primary. And heck, I hope for at least the last two candidates, I hope you both make it to the second round. And we'll see you again in November.
Rachel, do you have a comment or question? It looks like your hand's raised.
I do, and I apologize for not being on video. I just put my San Diego Unified School District kindergartner down to bed. So I'm a little bit late to the meeting, but I was able to hear at least the school board candidates. And I want to thank all the candidates. I too am very emotional about the events of today. And I want to ask every single candidate to please remember your duties to the smallest citizens in our country. I want you to put that above donors. I want you to put that above party politics. I want you to put that above all else. We have to protect our own citizens and the smallest among them. I'm terrified to send him to school tomorrow. I want you to remember that with every single decision you make. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing that, Rachel.
Thank you, Rachel. I think you're speaking for all of us.
Oh, Tommy,
right.
it looks like you have a comment or question too. Oh.
Yes, if it's okay. I don't mean to belabor the meeting. I know it's getting late, but you know, building upon what Rachel said, you know, I was endorsed by San Diegans for gun violence prevention 4 years ago. Prevention of gun violence is very important to me. It's affected my family personally, and obviously, when you see things like what happens today, there are no words, there are no ways to get out in front of it. I'm about to share online on my social media, my campaign social media, a piece that I wrote nearly 10 years ago when the attack happened in Newtown, Connecticut. And I don't like sharing it because nothing's changed. And I can assure you, anyone running for office must address this issue. And it can't be on the heels when something like this occurs. It has to be part of the conversation every day. And as Rachel mentioned, as Cody mentioned, you know, this affects parents sending their kids to school. We simply cannot live in the Wild West and in a dystopian world of fear. And many of our neighbors who make those claims about their concerns about gun violence talk about the concerns of a dystopian future. We've arrived. We arrived 30 years ago. And we have to keep discussing it and addressing it. But more importantly, we have to push policy on that. So thank you. I didn't mean to, I just wanted to build on what Rachel indicated and what Cody said earlier. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tommy. We're sort of in the public announcement section of our meeting, and I actually don't see any candidates that we haven't already heard from.
Oh, it looks like Michelle Krug has her hand raised.
Okay.
Hi, Michelle.
Hi. I just had an announcement to make, which is that the California Democratic Party is holding their July 8th through the 10th executive board meeting. Unfortunately, it's in person only at this time. It's going to be in Los Angeles, but if you go to cadem.org, you can, they don't have the agenda up yet, but that's where you'll find the agenda. It's going to be at the JW Marriott in Los Angeles. Lauren Beer and some others are real, including myself, have been trying to push them to do it hybrid. So I don't know if that will change, but some of the 19 caucuses are going to be on Zoom. So again, at the cadem.org website, you can check that out. Also, if anybody has any resolutions or legislation support or oppose, those are able to be brought up at the e-board meeting, and you just need to fill out a form. The directions and requirements are very clear on the website if you go to either resolutions or legislation, and those are due by June 8th at noon. So it's 30 days before the e-board meeting. So check out cadem.org. Thanks.
Thank you, Michelle. And Daniel, you've got your hand up.
I did. I wanted to thank everyone for this wonderful two forums today. I think a lot of us have educated on a lot of the candidates today. I do want to say Lori Saldana is running for San Diego City Council. She wasn't able to be here today because we're out walking, but I wanted to just speak on behalf of the campaign really quickly. The campaign is doing extremely well, and we'd appreciate any support that you guys can get. An energy climate champion, champion of choice person up at City Hall. So we're really trying to make sure that there is leadership and experience back at City Hall where there currently is none for District 2. So we need your help to elect Lori Saldana to this city council seat. If you want more information, please go to lorisaldana.com. We are talking to voters every day. And we recently just got the endorsement of the Union Tribune. Sorry, there's a bus right here. So we recently got the endorsement of the Union Tribune, rated qualified by San Diegans against gun violence. And we'd love your support as well. So if you have a moment, please come out and walk with us. We'd greatly appreciate it. Thanks again, everyone.
Thank you. Maz, I'll turn it over to you for anything, any concluding remarks?
Nadia. Yeah, I think this has been wonderful. Thank you again, Nadia, for the wonderful work you did and all the candidates. I think we are ready to wrap it up. I don't see any more hands raised, so we'll do this again next month, hopefully. Look for our next announcement. Thanks again.
And vote, everybody.
Thank you.
Vote. Oh, yeah. And vote correctly.
Vote.
All right. Good night, everyone.
Night. Thank you.
Thank you.